Let's talk a little bit more about using the capo and just sort of reinforce what was covered in the last video. You're definitely going to want to spend some time working with the capo on your own and kind of making sure you understand what I'm talking about. I guess the main idea that I want to stress from the last video is the idea of root notes and how those can really help you to change keys using the capo. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of the basic chords and just give you an example of finding the root note from that chord further up the neck. So, and I'll give you some examples of actual situations where I use the capo. I play a lot with another guitar player, and one of the great things about using a capo is that, let's say the two of us are playing guitars together and we're in the key of E. We don't both want to be doing the same guitar shapes, because we're going to be sort of repeating each other, each other's parts, and it's probably going to sound kind of muddy because you're going to have two different, almost identical guitar parts going. There's no way we're going to be perfectly lined up, and it's going to be kind of redundant because we're going to be playing the same things. So one of the really nice tricks you can use is, let's say my partner is playing good old E shapes. So the song has got some E chords in it, and some A chords in it, and some B7 chords. How about that? Nice straightforward song in E. So I'm going to let him play these chords that are lower down on the neck, that have a lower pitch to them. They're in the lower range of the guitar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play C shapes in the key of E. I know that if I play a C chord, that the note I'm playing with my third finger is the root note, so it's a C. And I know the notes on the 5th string, so I know that the 7th fret on the 5th string is an E. So that if I just recreate the C shape with my third finger on the 7th fret, that would be an E, as long as my guitar has been shortened with the capo, so that now the open strings are in line with the chord I'm playing. And so, though my fingers think this is a C, it's actually an E chord. And now I can just imagine I'm in the key of C, play C, F, and G7, and I'm playing more of a mid-range on the guitar. The chords are in the mid-range, so that our two guitar parts won't muddy each other up, and they'll actually be contrasting in a nice way. And we've kind of expanded the range of what the listener's hearing. We can get even more extreme with that if we wanted. Let's look at A, okay? So A shapes. We're going to pretend we're still in the key of E. So my partner's still playing E, A, B7. But I want to use A shapes in the key of E. Okay, well, A has a root note on the 5th string, open. So what I want to do is find an E note on the 5th string. Well, we already know from the last example that's the 7th fret. But now we want to recreate an A chord. Now, this is either easy or tricky, depending on how you look at it, I guess. Since in A, the 5th string open is the root note, we just have to make this 7th fret the open string. So that means that the capo would go right on the 7th fret. And we're starting to get about as high as you can go with the capo. We'll see how far we can push it. But this is going to give us a very high, if I play an A shape, this is an E chord, but we're using the higher pitches of the strings by shortening our guitar this much. We're kind of verging on mandolin territory here in terms of the pitch of the strings. So now I would just play A shape, D shape, E shape, like this. And when I play an A shape, I'm actually playing an E chord. When I play a D shape, I'm actually playing an A chord. And then when I play an E7 shape, I'm playing a B7 chord. So if I were doing this capo position and my partner was playing open E shapes, there would be a nice big separation between our two parts. We would both be in the key of E. The two parts would work together really well, but different pitches in terms of the notes of the chords. So that shows us how we can use C shapes and A shapes in the key of E. And the key concept is knowing that there's a E root note on the 7th fret. Let's look at something like the key of G, using a G shape. And as you can see from this, certain chord shapes lend themselves to certain keys. G has its own keys that work well with the capo. One that I'm gonna use here is B flat, which you do see a fair amount of tunes in the key of B flat. It's a good key if you play piano, so you might be learning a song that originated on the piano and you'd like to play in the key of B flat, but not necessarily use all bar chords, which is what you'd pretty much have to do without the capo. You'd be relying on a lot of more closed positions, chord shapes. So what we want to do is use something really comfortable, like the chords we know in the key of G, and we want to translate that into the key of B flat. So once again, the root note is the answer, is the secret. We know that the 3rd fret 6th string is a G. It's the root note. It's a G when we're playing a G chord. And if you learn your notes on the 6th string, the 6th fret is the 6th fret of the 6th string is a B flat. So we know we want to play our G chord here, and that means that the 3rd fret would have to be the nut where the open strings are. And if we do that, then when we strum a G shape, we are now playing a B flat chord. And now we're free to play anything we know chord-wise in the key of G. And we will be in the key of B flat. So that the G shape is actually a B flat, the D shape is actually an F, and the C shape is actually an E flat, another hard to play chord. Okay. Now, what about if we wanted to use the key of G to play in the key of C sharp? It would be the same notion, but we want to find C sharp. And again, we're getting to the limits. C sharp is on the 9th fret with the 6th string. So our G shape would be like that. We'd have to move to the capo on the 6th fret. And now, if I'm using G shapes, I'm in the key of C sharp. All right, now we're getting to something that I think we really need to focus on, which is E and D. Specifically, D is going to be something we really want to talk about. If you want to use E shapes further up the neck, it's a little bit like using the A shapes because the E has an open string as its root note. 6th string open. So let's just put the capo up here on the 7th fret, all right? And now that means that if I play an E shape, the capo, first of all, is now the nut and it's the open strings. If I play an E shape, I'm actually playing a B chord. This is another key that is pretty tricky to play, and it's nice to be able to play with open strings. So E shape would be B, our A shape would be an E major chord, and if you decide to play a B7 shape, that's an F sharp 7. So E shapes are fairly straightforward. Your root note is on the 6th string. D shapes, though, require that you have some familiarity with E shapes because D shapes are the one chord family where there is no root note on the 5th or 6th strings, okay? So let's take a look at, I've got my D chord here. The root note is on the open 4th string. Okay, so try and follow this. I'll try and make it as clear as I can. Let's go back to an E shape for 1 second. If you study the root notes of the E shape, this open E shape, there are 3 root notes. There's one on the 6th string, there's one on the 4th string, and there's one on the 1st string. Now we want to focus on the root notes on the 6th string and the 4th string. And notice that there's a very specific relationship between those 2 notes. The E is the open string, and the low E is the open string, and then the next E is on the 4th string 2nd fret. So we could say that those 2 root notes are a string apart. You would skip a string, and you would skip a fret, because it's from the open string to the 2nd string. So maybe if I move up the neck to show you just that relationship. What we're learning here is that if you have a root note on the 6th string, so now I'm playing an A root note on the 6th string 5th fret, then there is a root note that's equal to that same note, an octave higher, but it's the same root note, if you skip a fret, okay, and then skip a string. So it's this little diagonal relationship. I'm playing the 5th fret 6th string, and I'm playing the 7th fret 4th string. And in this case, they are both A notes, okay? Okay, what this means is that if you want to use D shapes, which are very useful in coordinating with the capo to play in different keys, you're going to have to do a little 2-step process to find the root notes, unless you go ahead and memorize the notes on the 4th string, which I would recommend. But until that time, you might want to use this little shortcut that I'm showing you. Okay, we want to use D shapes. We want to play in the key of G. So what that means is we need to find a G note on the 4th string. And let's say we are not as comfortable with the notes on the 4th string. What you're going to do is find a G note on the 6th string. Okay, that's 3rd fret 6th string. And then remember that relationship, that if I skip a fret and skip a string, there's this little diagonal finger shape, 1st finger, 3rd finger. That tells me that the 5th fret 4th string is also a G. So now I've found a G on the 4th string, which is what I needed, a root note. And since that's open in the D chord, the root note is the open 4th string, then I want to put my capo right on the 5th fret, so that now the open 4th string is a G, and if I play a D chord, I am now playing actually a G chord. D shape, G chord. So I do my primary chords in the key of D rather, sorry. Do my primary chords in the key of D, so I would do a D shape, a G shape, and an A shape, but now I'm actually in the key of G. I'm actually playing a G chord, a C chord, and a D chord. So you can see that the possibilities are endless with the capo. And hopefully this is not too convoluted. I think it's the kind of thing that sounds more complicated when you explain it and becomes much clearer when you just spend some time messing around on your own and putting songs in different keys. There's several reasons you would want to do this. One is what I said earlier in this video, which is that you're playing with somebody else who's also playing guitar, and you want to be playing different shapes than them to separate the sound of the 2 guitars. That's one really good use. Second use is that it just sounds different. I really like the sound of some of these really high capoed chord shapes. Like I said, it's almost a mandolin kind of sound. So personally, I just really enjoy that. And if you play a lot of guitar, it can be nice to just change the sound of your guitar once in a while. And thirdly, vocal range is a real issue here. You're going to find situations where either you're singing the song and the song is too high or too low, or you're working with a singer and it's too high or too low for them. You'd be surprised what just one fret's difference can make a huge difference. So you could be singing the song in, C. It could be the song you're playing just open chords in C, and there's a couple notes in the song that the singer is kind of bottoming out on it. They can't hit those low notes. Well, you could start by just experimenting. What if we just bring everything up one fret? So we're in the key of C sharp. Tighten up that capo a little bit. If we're in the key of C sharp, as a guitar player, you can just keep playing what you were playing in C. But now for the vocalist, maybe that's the difference. And now those low notes are not quite so hard. One thing I do is just, you could just kind of experiment. You could say, well, how high can we go? You could say, what if we do this? And it may be too high for them to sing. Or you may discover that a song that sounded okay in C sounds, great in E flat. It's really interesting what you can discover by doing that. Just kind of experimenting with the capo. I think that about covers it as far as the basic capo skills you're going to want to have. So I hope you enjoy using the capo as a tool to kind of expand your abilities on the guitar.